the stars began to move backward. Not metaphorically, not as some poetic illusion glimpsed by mystics or prophets. Entire constellations across the outer rim twisted in impossible spirals, hyperspace lanes flickering like broken circuitry as seconds folded into minutes and minutes collapsed into nothingness. Republic navigation beacons blinked out of existence, then reappeared centuries older before stabilizing again. For a brief, terrifying moment, the galaxy itself seemed unsure which direction time was meant to flow. At the center of that impossible distortion, a golden sphere of fractured reality expanded silently above an uncharted system, and from it, she emerged. Kronika, the keeper of time, architect of destiny, goddess beyond mortal comprehension, stepped into a universe that did not belong to her, a universe governed not by her hourglass, but by something else, something alive. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop a character name in comments. May the Force be with you. The Clone Wars had already turned the galaxy into a tapestry of chaos. Separatist fleets clashed with Republic armadas across thousands of star systems. Entire planets burned while political leaders debated strategy in the sterile halls of Coruscant. Jedi Knights served as generals, clone troopers fought and died in numbers too vast to comprehend. And behind it all, hidden in plain sight, the Dark Lord of the Sith orchestrated the conflict like a master composer guiding a symphony toward its inevitable crescendo. But even Darth Sidious did not foresee this. The anomaly first appeared near the mid-rim trade corridor known as the Kessel Run, an area already unstable due to gravitational distortions from nearby black holes. Republic sensors initially detected it as a hyperspace rupture, possibly caused by experimental separatist weaponry. Within minutes, however, the readings became incomprehensible. Time itself was fluctuating. A Venator-class star destroyer escorting a convoy of medical frigates suddenly experienced a localized temporal reversal. Crew members reported objects moving before they were touched, blaster bolts fired and then returning to their barrels. One clone trooper claimed he watched his own hand age decades in seconds before returning to normal. Then communications cut out entirely. On the bridge, Captain Arlen Vox stared at the main viewport as reality split open before his eyes. A golden sphere of radiant gold energy, thousands of meters wide, hung in space like a newborn star. Lightning made of clockwork geometry crawled across its surface, each arc forming symbols no Republic database could translate. "General," Vox said, voice tight, "we need immediate—" The sentence never finished, because time stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Blaster fire froze mid-air. Console lights hung suspended like glowing droplets. Even the hum of the ship's engines vanished into absolute silence. The entire battlefield, Republic ships, Separatist droid cruisers, drifting debris, became a motionless sculpture. Except for one figure. She stepped forward from the golden sphere as if walking through a doorway between realities. Kronika's presence warped the very concept of existence around her. Gold and obsidian armor flowed like liquid metal across her form. Her eyes glowed with ancient knowledge, memories of countless timelines, countless universes rewritten and perfected under her design. She raised one hand. Invisible threads spread outward, connecting to every frozen object in space. She felt their histories instantly, the metal mined from asteroids, the clones engineered on Kamino, the droids assembled in separatist factories. But something was wrong. There was resistance, subtle, persistent, a current pushing back against her control. Kronika frowned. This realm
her voice echoed across the silent void, does not obey. She extended her power further, attempting to rewind the battlefield to observe prior events. Normally, time would unravel effortlessly before her will. Instead, she encountered turbulence, not physical, spiritual, an energy field permeating everything, living, watching. The Force. For the first time since her arrival, Kronika felt uncertainty. Far away on Coruscant, inside the Jedi Temple, Master Yoda's ears twitched sharply. The ancient Jedi Grand Master paused mid-step, his cane tapping once against the polished floor. Around him, younglings practicing meditation suddenly gasped. The Force rippled violently, like a pond struck by a falling star. "Disturbance," Yoda murmured. "Unlike any before, this is." Mace Windu approached from the corridor, expression already tense. "You feel it too." Yoda nodded slowly. "Time itself, wounded, it feels." That was not something Jedi normally sensed. The Force flowed through living beings, through destiny and probability. But time as a manipulable entity? That concept bordered on myth. Yet the disturbance was undeniable. A presence had entered the galaxy. Ancient, immense, neither light nor dark. Dangerous. Back near the anomaly, motion suddenly resumed. Blaster bolts completed their trajectories, consoles beeped, crew members stumbled as if waking from a dream. Captain Vox inhaled sharply. What just happened? Then he saw her, floating outside the viewport, surrounded by drifting fragments of golden energy. Kronika observed the ships like a scientist studying insects. Separatist droid fighters suddenly accelerated toward her, targeting scanners detecting an unknown entity. They fired. Green laser bolts struck her body directly. They dissolved into particles of reversed time, energy rewinding into nothing before contact. Kronika tilted her head slightly. "Primitive," she said. With a gentle motion of her fingers, she altered causality. The droid fighters disassembled mid-flight, components separating backward through their own construction history until they became raw materials again, scattering harmlessly into space dust.
Republic officers stared in horror and awe. This was power beyond any weapon they had ever witnessed. Yet Kronika still felt that resistance, that persistent interference. Her gaze shifted toward a Republic cruiser where two presences burned brightly within the Force, beacons of potential unlike the others. Jedi. She moved toward them instantly, crossing kilometers without traversing the intervening space. Inside the cruiser's hangar bay, alarms blared as sensors detected an entity appearing from nowhere. Two figures ignited lightsabers simultaneously, a blue blade, a green blade. Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi stood ready. Kronika studied them with fascination. "These beings," she whispered, "they touch the current." Anakin stepped forward, protective instinct immediate. "I don't know what you are, but you picked the wrong war zone." Obi-Wan's voice remained calm but cautious. "We mean no hostility," he added. "If you are responsible for the disturbance, perhaps we can—" Kronika lifted one hand. Time froze again. Except for them. Both Jedi remained conscious, able to move. Anakin's eyes widened. "Master, why can I still—" Obi-Wan looked equally stunned. "The Force," he realized. Kronika's expression changed for the first time. Genuine intrigue. "You resist," she said softly. "Impossible, yet true." She walked around them slowly, studying their connection to the Force, like a scholar encountering a new law of physics. "This universe possesses a temporal anchor, a living continuum binding events together." Anakin frowned. "You're talking in circles." Kronika stopped directly in front of him. "And you," she said, voice lowering with curiosity, "are the center of it. The chosen one. Even she could sense it, a nexus of destiny so powerful it distorted probability itself. For the first time since her arrival, Kronika realized something profound. This galaxy could not simply be rewritten. It would have to be conquered or balanced. And somewhere, deep within the currents of the Force, another presence noticed her as well. On Coruscant, in his private office overlooking the Senate district, Chancellor Palpatine slowly turned toward the window. A smile crept across his face. "A new player," he murmured. The game had just become far more interesting. The anomaly did not close. It grew. What had first appeared as a localized rupture in space now expanded into a sprawling distortion field spanning thousands of kilometers. Hyperspace routes near the Kessel Corridor became dangerously unstable, forcing Republic and Separatist fleets to reroute through longer, more vulnerable paths. Entire convoys vanished after entering the region, some reappearing minutes later with crews claiming months had passed. Others never returned at all. Astromech droids began producing contradictory navigation logs, chronometers desynchronized, medical scanners recorded soldiers with cellular aging inconsistent with their biological timelines. For the Republic, it was a logistical nightmare. For the Jedi, it was something far worse, because the Force itself trembled around the phenomenon. Inside the frozen hangar bay, Anakin Skywalker took a cautious step forward, his boots making no sound against the motionless floor. Everything remained suspended, technicians frozen mid-run, sparks hanging in the air like tiny stars, a fuel hose caught mid-swing. Only 3 beings moved freely: Anakin, Obi-Wan, Kronika. Obi-Wan studied her carefully, his Jedi instinct screaming that this entity operated on principles entirely outside their understanding. Yet she radiated no direct malice, only immense authority. "You have manipulated time. That is not a power we have encountered before." Kronika regarded him with calm detachment. "Time is not manipulated. It is governed, shaped, perfected." Anakin crossed his arms. "By you, yes. No arrogance, no hesitation, just certainty." That alone unsettled Obi-Wan more than any threat could have. Anakin, however, felt something else beneath her words, a pressure against the Force. Not dark, not light, but invasive. "You don't belong here," Anakin said bluntly. Kronika tilted her head slightly. "Correct." She extended her hand toward him. Invisible energy brushed against Anakin's consciousness, like cold wind moving through the currents of the Force. Instinctively, he pushed back. The hangar trembled. For a brief moment, Kronika's temporal stasis flickered. Obi-Wan's eyes widened. "Anakin!" Kronika withdrew her hand, intrigued rather than offended. "The resistance originates from you. Your existence anchors probability pathways, a convergence point." Anakin had no idea what she meant, but the Force pulsed around him in response. "You're saying he's important," Obi-Wan translated dryly. Kronika nodded once. "He is a fulcrum upon which countless futures pivot." That statement hung in the frozen air. Then, unexpectedly, Kronika released her power. Time resumed. Technicians crashed into crates, sparks fell, alarms resumed blaring. The normal chaos of a warship hangar returned instantly. Except, Kronika still stood there, fully visible now. Blaster rifles snapped up around her as clone troopers reacted with trained precision. "Hold your fire," Obi-Wan shouted. The troopers hesitated but maintained aim. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber but did not relax. "What do you want?" he asked her. Kronika looked past them, beyond the ship, beyond the battlefield, as if sensing the entire galaxy at once. "I seek equilibrium." That word echoed strangely in the Force. Obi-Wan exchanged a glance with Anakin. Equilibrium could mean many things: peace, balance, or domination. Across the battlefield, Separatist command ships had also detected Kronika's presence. General Grievous watched the sensor feed with mechanical fascination. A being capable of halting time itself, the cyborg rasped. Capture her. Tactical droids immediately began calculating engagement probabilities. Warning, one droid stated. Unknown entity exhibits reality-altering capabilities. Engagement success probability 0.0003%. Grievous's eyes narrowed. I did not ask for probabilities. Fighters launched anyway. Dozens of vulture droids swarmed toward the Republic cruiser carrying Kronika. Back in the hangar, Anakin sensed them first. Incoming fighters, he said. Obi-Wan sighed. Of course there are. Kronika observed their reactions with curiosity. You prioritize conflict resolution despite inferior odds, she noted. That's called being in a war, Anakin replied. Blaster fire erupted as Separatist fighters began strafing runs on the cruiser exterior. Explosions rocked the ship. Clone troopers scrambled to defensive positions. Without being asked, Kronika stepped forward toward the open hangar shield overlooking space. She raised both hands. Time fractured again, but differently this time. Instead of freezing everything, she isolated the incoming fighters within localized temporal pockets. To observers, the droids appeared to move in slow motion, like insects trapped in amber. Kronika then compressed those pockets. The fighters collapsed inward, crushed by accelerated timelines, aging thousands of years and seconds before disintegrating into dust. Anakin stared. Okay, he admitted quietly. That was impressive. Obi-Wan gave him a look. Anakin. What? It was. But Kronika staggered slightly. For the first time, exertion showed. The Force pushed back against her manipulation, creating turbulence she had not experienced before. Her power here required effort. She was still operating near full capacity, but not effortlessly. And that realization began forming a dangerous thought in her mind. This galaxy could challenge her, which meant reshaping it would be interesting. Light years away, Count Dooku felt the disturbance ripple through the Force like a shockwave. The Sith Lord paused mid-meditation aboard his flagship. Extraordinary, he murmured. A power neither Jedi nor Sith, ancient, controlled. He reached out further with the Force and felt resistance, as if time itself refused to reveal its secrets. Dooku smiled slightly. My master will want to know. On Coruscant, Chancellor Palpatine already knew. Standing alone in his office, he extended his senses into the Force, probing the anomaly with careful precision. What he encountered made his smile widen. The being possessed immense power over causality, but lacked understanding of the Force's deeper nature, which meant she was vulnerable, manipulable, or perhaps recruitable. Yes, Palpatine whispered softly, you will be useful. Back aboard the Republic cruiser, tension filled the hangar. Clone troopers remained uneasy around Kronika. Anakin approached her again. You could end this war, he said suddenly. Obi-Wan turned sharply. Anakin! No, think about it, Anakin continued. If you can control time, you could stop the Separatists, save millions of lives. Kronika studied him. Compassion, attachment, fear of loss, all traits she had seen countless times across countless timelines. You believe suffering should be erased, she said. Yes, a noble yet flawed objective. Anakin frowned. How is saving lives flawed? Kronika gestured toward the battlefield outside. Conflict produces transformation. Transformation produces evolution. Erasing suffering entirely destabilizes existence. Obi-Wan's expression grew thoughtful. You're saying pain has purpose. Yes. Anakin hated that answer, but part of him sensed truth in it. Kronika turned toward the stars again. I must understand this galaxy before altering it, she said. Your force complicates temporal architecture. Obi-Wan stepped forward cautiously. Then perhaps you should come with us. The Jedi Council may help you understand what you're dealing with. Kronika considered. The Jedi represented order, structure, guardians of balance. Studying them could provide valuable data. Yes, she said. Anakin blinked. That was easier than expected. But deep within the Force, unseen by all of them, shadows shifted, because another path was already forming, one that would lead Kronika directly into the orbit of the most dangerous being in the galaxy, Darth Sidious. Hyperspace shimmered like liquid starlight outside the Republic cruiser's viewport as the vessel jumped toward Coruscant. Inside the ship, tension lingered in every corridor. Clone troopers whispered theories about the Golden Woman who could stop time. Mechanics reported tools moving before being touched. One medic swore he watched a wound briefly reverse itself before stabilizing again. Even hardened veterans of the Clone Wars, soldiers who had faced Sith Lords, battled armies of droids, and survived planetary bombardments, felt uneasy in Kronika's presence. Because she did not feel like a warrior, she felt like a law of nature walking among them. In the observation chamber, Kronika stood before the transparasteel viewport, watching hyperspace distortions ripple across infinity. This universe was fascinating. Unlike her own realm, where timelines flowed from the hourglass she governed, the Star Wars galaxy possessed a self-regulating temporal structure. Events were influenced by probability, emotion, and choice, all bound together by the Force. A living temporal network. That realization alone had occupied her thoughts for the entire journey. Behind her, Anakin leaned against the doorway, arms folded. "You've been staring at that for an hour," he said. Kronika did not turn. "Hyperspace travel is a primitive yet elegant solution," she replied. "You bend space to shorten time, rather than manipulate time directly." "That's one way to put it," Anakin said. He hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering him since their first encounter. "You said I'm important, a fulcrum. What does that mean?" Kronika finally faced him. Her eyes glowed faintly with golden energy. "You exist at the convergence of countless probability branches. Your choices determine the dominant timeline of this galaxy." Anakin frowned. "That sounds like Jedi prophecy talk." "It is more precise than prophecy," Kronika said calmly. "It is statistical inevitability." The Force stirred uneasily around him. Anakin hated being told his destiny mattered more than his choices. "I make my own decisions," he said firmly. Kronika studied him with curiosity. "Yes," she said, "and that is precisely why you are dangerous." Elsewhere aboard the cruiser, Obi-Wan Kenobi stood in a secure communications chamber transmitting a report to Coruscant. The holographic figures of Mace Windu and Yoda flickered before him. "Describe her again," Windu said. Obi-Wan nodded. "She demonstrates absolute control over localized temporal fields, freezing, accelerating, and reversing events. However, Force-sensitive individuals retain mobility within her stasis." Yoda's expression grew grave. "Power over time, ancient and forbidden such knowledge is." "There's more," Obi-Wan continued. "She claims to seek equilibrium, not conquest, but I sense detachment, like a scientist observing an experiment." Windu crossed his arms. "That makes her unpredictable." "Yes." Yoda tapped his cane thoughtfully. "Bring her to the temple. Study this, we must." But as the transmission ended, Yoda remained still. Because beneath Obi-Wan's words, he sensed something deeper. The future itself had become clouded. More than before.
Coruscant, galactic capital, planet-wide cityscape glowing with trillions of lights. As the Republic cruiser emerged from hyperspace and entered orbital traffic patterns, Kronika felt something she had not experienced since arriving in this universe. Resistance.
Not from the Force itself this time, but from a presence within it. Powerful, hidden, watching her. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Somewhere on this world, another master of manipulation existed. Deep within the Senate district, Chancellor Palpatine stood alone in his private chambers. His expression remained serene, but inside, calculations raced. The being approaching Coruscant possessed abilities that rivaled or perhaps exceeded his own in certain domains, yet she lacked understanding of the Force's emotional dimension, which meant she could be guided, influenced, perhaps even controlled. Sidious allowed a thin smile. "Yes, come to me." The Jedi Temple landing platform filled with activity as the cruiser arrived. Jedi Knights, Temple Guards, and security personnel waited in cautious formation. When Kronika stepped onto Coruscant soil for the first time, a ripple passed through every Force-sensitive present. Some staggered, others gasped. Younglings inside the temple suddenly began crying without understanding why, because Kronika's presence distorted the natural flow of time around her, like gravity bending space. Mace Windu approached with measured steps, flanked by several Jedi Masters. Anakin and Obi-Wan stood nearby. "You are the one causing the disturbance," Windu said. Kronika inclined her head slightly. "I am Kronika, Keeper of Time." Her voice carried across the landing platform with unnatural resonance. Windu studied her carefully. "You claim dominion over time itself." "Yes, that is not possible," Windu said. Kronika extended her hand. For half a second, Windu's lightsaber aged thousands of years, metal corroding, circuits decaying, before snapping back to pristine condition. Several Jedi ignited their weapons instantly. Windu did not, but his eyes hardened. "I see," he said quietly. Yoda stepped forward next. The ancient Grand Master looked up at Kronika with deep concentration. "Outside the Force, you are not," Yoda said slowly. Kronika's gaze shifted to him. "Correct. Your Force permeates all existence here, including me." Yoda murmured. "Troubling this is." Kronika met his eyes. "You fear I will alter your galaxy." "Fear, yes," Yoda admitted, "but understand you we must." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Kronika spoke words that sent a chill through every Jedi present. "This galaxy is inefficient," she said calmly. "Conflict cycles endlessly. Billions suffer unnecessarily. I may correct that." Several Jedi reacted immediately. "That is not your decision to make," Windu said sharply. Kronika tilted her head. "Is it not?" The philosophical divide became instantly clear. The Jedi protected balance. Kronika enforced it. Very different concepts. Hours later, inside the council chamber, Kronika stood at the center while the Jedi Council formed a circle around her. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows overlooking Coruscant's endless skyline. Obi-Wan sensed tension building like a coming storm. "Tell us why you are here," Windu said. Kronika responded without hesitation. "My timeline collapsed during a recalibration event. Dimensional convergence redirected me into this universe. I now study its temporal framework." Ki Adimundi frowned. "You speak as though existence is an equation." "It is." Yoda leaned forward slightly. "Controlled destiny you seek." "Yes." "That path leads to darkness," Yoda said. Kronika's expression remained calm. "Darkness and light are irrelevant. Only balance matters." Anakin shifted uneasily. Something about her words resonated with his frustrations about the Jedi Order. Rigid rules, endless war, suffering everywhere. If someone could fix it. Obi-Wan noticed Anakin's reaction immediately and worried. Suddenly, Kronika stiffened, her eyes unfocused slightly. She was seeing something, not the present, the future. Fragments flashed before her mind, a black-armored warrior breathing mechanically, a massive battle station destroying a planet, a young woman wielding a blue lightsaber decades later, an old emperor laughing in darkness, stars burning, empires rising and falling, multiple timelines branching from one point. Anakin. Kronika's fascination deepened into obsession. "This galaxy contains extraordinary potential," she whispered. The Jedi exchanged uneasy glances. "What do you see?" Obi-Wan asked. Kronika turned toward Anakin again. "You," she said softly. And far across the city, in the shadows of political power, Darth Sidious smiled, because he felt it too. The convergence had begun.
Night fell over Coruscant like a curtain of stars. From orbit, the planet looked serene, an endless ocean of lights stretching across the surface of an entire world. But beneath that beauty, political tension and war anxiety pulsed through every level of the city. Senate debates raged, military fleets mobilized, intelligence networks hunted separatist spies. And somewhere within that vast urban labyrinth, two of the most dangerous minds in the galaxy prepared to meet. Inside the Jedi Temple, Kronika stood alone in a meditation chamber provided by the Council. The room was quiet, circular stone walls, soft illumination, ancient carvings depicting the history of the Jedi Order. Normally, Force-sensitive visitors found peace here. Kronika found data. She extended her perception through the force currents surrounding the temple. Unlike earlier attempts, she did not try to dominate them. Instead, she observed. The force flowed through living beings, yes, but also through probability, through choices, through emotion. It functioned as both energy field and temporal stabilizer. An elegant system, but flawed. Conflict nodes formed where fear, attachment, and ambition created chaotic branching timelines. Entire galactic wars erupted from individual decisions. From her perspective, this galaxy was a malfunctioning mechanism, one she could repair. Yet as she analyzed the flow, she sensed something else, a void within the force, hidden, concealed behind layers of deception. A presence watching her just as carefully as she studied the galaxy. Kronika opened her eyes. "Yes," she said quietly to the empty room, "you may reveal yourself." The air behind her shifted. Darkness pooled like liquid shadow, and then he appeared. Chancellor Palpatine. He wore his usual gentle smile, hands folded within his robe sleeves. To any observer, he looked like a concerned political leader visiting a diplomatic guest. But Kronika saw beyond the disguise instantly. Power radiated from him, coiled, predatory, ancient. "A Sith Lord," she said. Palpatine chuckled softly. "Straight to the point. I appreciate that." The darkness around him receded slightly as he stepped forward. "You are far from your home, Lady Kronika." "I am never far from time," she replied. Their eyes met. Two manipulators, two architects of destiny, each measuring the other. Palpatine circled slowly, studying her with fascination. "You possess extraordinary abilities to alter causality itself. Remarkable." Kronika watched him without reaction. "You seek to exploit them," she said. "Of course," Palpatine admitted easily, "as do you." There was no point in deception between beings like them. Kronika appreciated that. "You hide within governance structures while orchestrating war. Efficient." Palpatine smiled wider. "The galaxy requires order. Chaos must be guided." Kronika nodded slightly. "On that we agree." A moment of silence followed. Then Palpatine spoke the words that changed everything. "I know who the boy becomes." Kronika's eyes narrowed. "You refer to the Skywalker convergence."
Yes. Palpatine's voice lowered. In many futures, he destroys the Jedi. He becomes my apprentice. Together, we rule the galaxy. Kronika felt timelines shifting as he spoke, echoes of potential realities she had glimpsed earlier. You intend to corrupt him, she said. I intend to fulfill destiny, Palpatine corrected. Kronika considered that. Destiny is not fixed, it is engineered. Palpatine stopped walking. For the first time, his expression turned serious. Exactly.
The Force trembled slightly around them as two cosmic philosophies collided. Palpatine extended his hand, not physically, but through the Force. A vision formed between them. A possible future. The Republic fallen. The Empire rising. Star Destroyers dominating the galaxy. Jedi exterminated. Order imposed through fear. Palpatine and Vader ruling together. Kronika studied it analytically. Stable, she admitted, but inefficient. Oppression generates rebellion cycles. Palpatine's smile returned. Temporary rebellion, easily crushed. Kronika countered by projecting her own vision. A galaxy without war. No Sith, no Jedi Order dominance, no political corruption. A perfectly balanced timeline engineered through temporal intervention. Palpatine's eyes gleamed with interest. You would rewrite history itself. Yes, to create peace, to create balance. Palpatine considered her carefully. You realize that would erase trillions of lives, he said. Yes. No hesitation, no remorse. From Kronika's perspective, lives were variables in an equation. Palpatine respected that ruthlessness, but he also recognized the threat. If she rewrote the timeline entirely, his empire might never exist, which meant she could not be allowed to act freely. Yet destroying her might be impossible, so he chose a third option: alliance. Perhaps, Palpatine said smoothly, our goals are not so different. Kronika watched him silently. Help me reshape the galaxy, he continued. With your control over time and my mastery of the Force, we could eliminate inefficiencies permanently. Kronika sensed the deception immediately. He wanted power, dominance, control. But she also saw opportunity. The Sith possessed deep knowledge of the Force's darker aspects, knowledge that might help her overcome the resistance she encountered in this universe. A temporary alliance could be beneficial. You would betray me eventually, she said calmly. Palpatine chuckled. Undoubtedly. She nodded once. Likewise. They stood there, two cosmic predators acknowledging mutual treachery. And then, a ripple exploded through the Force. Both of them turned simultaneously. Far across the city, alarms began sounding. Explosions, blaster fire, fear. Palpatine frowned. That was not scheduled. Kronika extended her perception. Multiple armed groups attacking simultaneously. Mandalorians, separatist commandos, criminal syndicates, all converging on the same prize: Kronika. Back in the meditation chamber, Kronika felt the battle unfolding. Probability lines fractured wildly, violence escalating. She glanced at Palpatine. You orchestrated this? Palpatine shook his head slightly. No, but I intend to benefit from it. He stepped backward into shadow. We will speak again soon, Lady Kronika. And then he vanished. Kronika turned toward the temple entrance as explosions echoed through stone corridors. Mortals fighting over control of time itself. Predictable, yet intriguing. She raised her hand. Golden energy gathered around her fingers. Outside, the battle was about to change forever.
The first Mandalorian breached the temple doors with a thermal detonator. Ancient stone, walls that had stood for centuries as symbols of Jedi peace, shattered under the explosion.
Smoke and debris filled the grand entrance hall as armored warriors surged forward in disciplined formation, jetpacks igniting in controlled bursts to propel them past defensive choke points. They were not Death Watch. Their armor bore older markings, heritage sigils from clans long believed extinct or scattered after Mandalore's civil conflicts. These warriors had not come for political power. They had come for something greater. Time itself. Blaster fire erupted immediately as Jedi Temple guards engaged the attackers. Blue and green lightsabers cut through the smoke, deflecting bolts in flashing arcs of energy. Clone security forces took cover behind pillars, returning fire with military precision. But Mandalorians were not ordinary soldiers. Beskar armor absorbed glancing lightsaber strikes. Wrist-mounted flamethrowers forced Jedi to retreat from defensive positions. Grappling lines launched warriors into elevated vantage points within seconds. The temple, normally a sanctuary, became a battlefield. Anakin Skywalker ignited his lightsaber mid-sprint, blue light illuminating the corridor as he and Obi-Wan reached the entrance hall. "What in the galaxy?" Anakin started. A Mandalorian slammed into him from above, jetpack roaring. Anakin twisted instinctively, catching the warrior's gauntlet before a vibroblade could strike his neck. The two crashed into the floor, momentum cracking stone tiles beneath them. The Mandalorian was strong, but Anakin was stronger. Using the Force, he hurled the warrior across the hall into a pillar hard enough to dent Beskar plating. Obi-Wan deflected incoming blaster fire while calmly assessing the situation. "These aren't random mercenaries," he said. "This is coordinated." Anakin sensed it too. Multiple factions, different attack patterns, all converging toward the same internal location. They're heading for Kronika, he realized. Outside, Republic gunships screamed through the Coruscant skyline, responding to emergency signals. But airspace interference suddenly disrupted navigation systems. Time distortions. Ships veered off course as chronometers desynced again. The anomaly surrounding Kronika was expanding, reacting to conflict. In the temple courtyard, Count Dooku advanced through the chaos with elegant precision, his curved lightsaber deflecting blaster bolts from clone troopers attempting to intercept him. Around him, separatist commando droids engaged Jedi defenders with ruthless efficiency. Dooku's objective was simple: acquire Kronika. Her abilities could end the Clone Wars instantly, or ensure separatist victory permanently. Either outcome served the Sith. He stepped over fallen debris, eyes focused on the temple entrance. Then he felt it. A temporal shockwave pulsed outward from inside the structure. Dooku stopped, smiled. She awakens. Deep within the temple corridors, bounty hunters move through maintenance passages with stealth technology activated. Their leader, a scarred weak-way mercenary named Gorv Tau, had accepted an enormous contract through the criminal underworld. Capture the Golden Woman alive. Payment, enough credits to buy a star system. Tal didn't care about politics or prophecy, only profit. He signaled his team forward. "Target chamber ahead," he whispered. They breached the door and froze. Kronika stood waiting. She had not moved from the center of the meditation chamber. Golden energy flowed around her like liquid sunlight. The mercenaries aimed weapons instantly. "Don't move," Tal shouted. "You're coming with—" Kronika raised one finger. Time stopped. The mercenaries froze mid-motion, expressions locked in aggression. Kronika walked among them slowly. Primitive beings driven by currency incentives, predictable variables. She could erase them effortlessly, but instead, she studied them, because something new was happening.
The Force interference had intensified dramatically during the battle. Her power required more effort now, which meant this galaxy's temporal structure responded dynamically to large-scale conflict. Fascinating. She turned toward the door just as Anakin and Obi-Wan burst into the chamber. They stopped abruptly upon seeing the frozen mercenaries. Anakin blinked. "Okay, I'm officially getting used to that," he said. Obi-Wan exhaled slowly. "You chose not to kill them." Kronika looked at him. They are irrelevant. Obi-Wan met her gaze steadily. No one is irrelevant. A philosophical statement, one Kronika had heard countless times across timelines, usually from beings destined to fail. But Obi-Wan's conviction registered. Data point noted. Suddenly, the chamber doors behind them exploded inward. Count Dooku entered, cloak billowing dramatically, lightsaber ignited. "Well," he said smoothly, "this saves me the trouble of searching." Anakin's expression hardened instantly. Dooku. Obi-Wan ignited his saber. "This is becoming a habit." Dooku ignored them, eyes locked on Kronika. "My dear," he said politely, "you possess abilities that could end this pointless war. I propose an arrangement." Kronika studied him. Another Sith, different from Palpatine, less concealed, more aristocratic. "You seek advantage," she said. "Of course," Dooku replied, "but consider the benefits. With your power, we could reshape the galaxy into a more refined order." Anakin scoffed. "You mean separatist control?" Dooku smiled faintly. "Semantics." Kronika sensed the branching timelines around this moment. Multiple outcomes. Alliance with Dooku, alliance with Palpatine, alliance with Jedi, or none. Each path produced vastly different futures. For the first time, she faced a genuine strategic choice. Before she could respond, another explosion rocked the temple. The Mandalorians had breached deeper levels. Their leader, clan warlord Torvek, marched through corridors toward the chamber with heavy Beskar armor and an energy axe crackling with plasma. Torvek's people believed Mandalore's fall into pacifism had been a mistake. With Kronika's power, they intended to rewrite history itself, restore Mandalorian supremacy, honor through conquest, destiny reclaimed. He kicked open the chamber entrance and saw Jedi, Sith, and the goddess of time. Torvek laughed. "Well," he said, voice booming through helmet speakers, "this just became interesting." The chamber now contained representatives of 4 factions: Jedi, Sith separatists, Mandalorians, criminal mercenaries frozen in time, all competing for Kronika. Anakin glanced between Dooku and Torvek. "This is getting crowded." Obi-Wan sighed. "Indeed." Dooku raised his saber slightly. "Lady Kronika, I suggest you choose wisely." Torvek slammed his axe against the floor, sparks flying. "No choosing," the Mandalorian growled. "She comes with us." Kronika looked between them. Warriors driven by ideology, power, honor, profit. Emotionally predictable. But what fascinated her most was Anakin, the convergence point, the future pivot. She extended her perception again and glimpsed something new, a timeline where she intervened directly in his destiny. The galaxy changed dramatically. Stability increased, conflict decreased, balance improved. But at a cost. Massive erasure of existing events, trillions of lives overwritten. For the first time since entering this universe, Kronika hesitated. Because this decision mattered. Golden energy intensified around her hands. Time itself began to fracture within the chamber. Everyone present felt reality bending. The choice was coming.
Reality split like glass under pressure. Golden fractures spread outward from Kronika's position, crawling across walls, floors, and even the air itself. The chamber seemed to exist in multiple moments simultaneously. Dust drifting both forward and backward, shattered debris reassembling only to break apart again. Everyone present felt it. Time was destabilizing. Anakin tightened his grip on his lightsaber. "Whatever you're doing," he said, voice tense, "you need to stop." Kronika did not respond, because she was no longer fully present in the room. Her consciousness had expanded outward into probability space. She was seeing timelines, thousands, millions, entire galactic histories branching from this single moment. She saw the Republic fall, the Jedi exterminated, Anakin Skywalker reborn as Darth Vader, an enforcer of tyranny beneath a Sith Empire. She saw the Rebel Alliance rise decades later. She saw Luke Skywalker redeeming his father. She saw Palpatine's apparent destruction, then his return. War after war after war, cycles repeating endlessly, conflict embedded into the galaxy's structure like a genetic flaw. But she also saw alternate possibilities, timelines where Anakin never fell, where the Sith were exposed early, where Mandalore rose again as a conquering empire, where the Jedi Order fractured into competing sects, where technological evolution replaced the Force entirely. Infinite outcomes, none perfect, all flawed. Kronika's obsession ignited. There had to be a superior configuration. There always was. She simply needed to design it. Back in the chamber, everyone watched as temporal energy intensified around her. Count Dooku narrowed his eyes. He is exploring futures, he realized. Torvek shifted his stance. Then we take her now. The Mandalorian charged. Anakin intercepted instantly, lightsaber clashing against the crackling energy axe with a shower of sparks. The impact rattled the chamber. Torvek was enormous, even by Mandalorian standards, and his Beskar armor absorbed the worst of the blow. "Out of my way, Jedi," Torvek growled. "Not happening," Anakin shot back. They fought with brutal intensity. Torvek's strikes were heavy, precise, designed to overpower rather than finesse. Anakin countered with speed and force-enhanced agility, flipping over attacks and striking exposed joints in the armor. Obi-Wan engaged two Mandalorians entering behind their leader, deflecting blaster bolts with practiced efficiency. Meanwhile, Count Dooku advanced toward Kronika cautiously. He sensed danger. Temporal energy this concentrated could be catastrophic, but the reward was worth the risk.
Suddenly, Kronika moved. She raised both arms. Time exploded outward. Everyone froze, except Force-sensitive individuals. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Dooku remained conscious, able to move within the stasis field. Torvek and the Mandalorians froze mid-motion like statues. Even drifting dust particles hung motionless in the air. The silence was absolute. Kronika descended slowly from the air until her feet touched the ground. Her eyes glowed brighter than before. "I have observed your futures," she said. Anakin frowned. "Our futures?" "Yes." She looked directly at him. "You become the greatest destroyer this galaxy has ever known." The words hit like a physical blow. Anakin's jaw tightened. "That's not true. It is highly probable." Obi-Wan stepped forward calmly. "The future is always in motion," he said. "Nothing is set." Kronika considered him. "You are correct," she admitted, "which is why intervention is possible." Dooku's interest sharpened immediately. "What kind of intervention?" he asked. Kronika turned slowly, addressing all of them. "I can reshape this galaxy into equilibrium," she said. "Eliminate the Sith, prevent the Jedi purge, end the war before it escalates." Anakin's eyes widened slightly. "You could do that?" "Yes." Hope flared in him. Millions of lives saved, no empire, no suffering. But Kronika continued. "The cost would be significant." Obi-Wan felt dread forming. "What cost?" Kronika answered with perfect calm. "Most of you would cease to exist." Silence. Even Dooku looked surprised. Anakin stared at her. "You're talking about wiping people out?"
Correct, Kronika said. A timeline reset would overwrite current events with a superior configuration. Trillions of lives would be replaced with alternate iterations. Obi-Wan's expression hardened. That is genocide. No, it is optimization. The philosophical divide could not have been clearer. Dooku stepped forward slowly. And in this optimized galaxy, he asked, what becomes of power structures? Kronika answered honestly. Sith dominance probability 0%. Jedi dominance reduced. Mandalorian expansion limited. Political corruption minimized. Dooku's smile faded. So no one rules. Correct. Balance is maintained. Dooku's smile faded. That is unacceptable. Anakin looked between them, mind racing. If she reset everything, Padme might never exist. His mother's death might still happen, or might not. Obi-Wan might not be his master. Everything he loved, gone, replaced by alternate versions. He felt fear and anger. You don't get to decide that, Anakin said fiercely. Kronika studied him. Emotion again. Attachment, predictable yet powerful. This galaxy suffers unnecessarily. Your resistance is irrational. No, Obi-Wan said quietly. It's human. Suddenly, another presence entered the frozen chamber. Darkness gathered near the doorway. Palpatine stepped through the temporal field, moving freely. Dooku's eyes widened slightly. My master? Anakin turned in shock. Chancellor? Palpatine smiled warmly at him. Anakin, my boy, you look troubled. Obi-Wan instantly sensed something wrong. The force around Palpatine twisted unnaturally. Kronika observed with interest. 2 Sith in the same room. Apprentice unaware. Master concealed. Fascinating dynamics. Palpatine turned toward her. Lady Kronika, he said smoothly, I believe we should discuss alternatives to universal erasure. Kronika tilted her head. You oppose optimization? I oppose losing my future, Palpatine replied honestly. She respected that answer. The chamber now held 4 conscious beings within frozen time. Kronika, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Dooku, Palpatine, and Kronika stood at the center of it all. Decision imminent. The frozen chamber felt smaller now, not physically, but existentially. 5 beings stood within a pocket of halted time, each representing a different future for the galaxy. The air shimmered with suspended particles of dust and light, glowing faintly gold from Kronika's temporal field. Outside the chamber walls, the war still raged, but here, causality itself waited for a decision. Kronika observed them all. The convergence had reached critical mass. Palpatine was the first to speak. My dear Kronika, he said in his warm grandfatherly tone, surely you understand that erasing an entire galaxy is inefficient. Kronika's eyes narrowed slightly. Inefficient? Yes, Palpatine continued smoothly. Why destroy what can be controlled? Obi-Wan immediately sensed manipulation in his words, though he still did not fully perceive Palpatine's Sith identity. Dooku, however, understood perfectly. My master proposes domination rather than annihilation, Dooku said calmly. Anakin blinked. Master? The word lingered in the air. Obi-Wan's head turned sharply toward Palpatine. Kronika watched with fascination, secrets unraveling, probability shifting. Palpatine ignored the tension and continued addressing Kronika.
With your command over time and my mastery of the Force, we could guide the galaxy into order without eliminating its inhabitants, he said. We reshape events, subtly. Kronika considered. A cooperative manipulation model, less destructive than a full reset, but also less stable. Conflict would persist, she said. Conflict is necessary, Palpatine replied. It drives progress. That statement resonated disturbingly with Kronika's own observations. But Obi-Wan stepped forward. No, he said firmly. Conflict is not necessary. Choice is. Palpatine's eyes flicked toward him briefly, amused. The Jedi still cling to naive ideals. Anakin stared between them, confusion growing. Something felt wrong, very wrong. Kronika extended her perception again, scanning future probability lines branching from this exact moment. She saw multiple alliance paths. Path 1. She joins Palpatine. Sith Empire rises faster. Galaxy falls into authoritarian stability. Path 2. She joins the Jedi. War ends sooner, but corruption resurfaces decades later. Path 3. She acts independently. Massive timeline restructuring with minimal resistance from the Force itself. Path 4. She removes the convergence point entirely. Her gaze shifted slowly toward Anakin. The most efficient solution. Eliminate the variable. Anakin felt it instantly, a cold realization sliding through his instincts. You're thinking about killing me, he said. Kronika did not deny it. You are the central instability, she said calmly. Removing you dramatically increases galactic equilibrium probability. Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber instantly. You will not touch him. Dooku's saber ignited as well, though his intentions were different. Palpatine remained still, observing. Anakin's anger surged. You don't get to decide who lives or dies, he snapped. Kronika tilted her head slightly. I already do. And in many timelines, she had.
The Force reacted violently to that declaration. Energy rippled through the frozen chamber like a shockwave. For the first time since arriving in this universe, Kronika felt genuine resistance pushing back against her authority. Not from individuals, from the Force itself. The living energy field rejected her attempt to remove a key destiny node. Fascinating and dangerous. Palpatine sensed opportunity. If you destroy him, he said quietly, you lose your greatest tool. Kronika looked at him. Explain. Palpatine smiled slightly. Anakin Skywalker is not merely a variable, he said. He is potential. Properly guided, he could enforce your equilibrium across the galaxy. Anakin stared at him in disbelief. What? Obi-Wan's suspicion deepened further. Palpatine stepped closer to Kronika. You wish to eliminate suffering, he said softly. So do I. Together, we could shape him into the instrument required to maintain order. Dooku watched carefully. His master was improvising, but brilliantly. Kronika considered the proposal, weaponizing the convergence point rather than eliminating it. Efficiency increased, risk also increased, but the concept held merit. Obi-Wan stepped between Anakin and the others. No, he said firmly. Anakin is not anyone's instrument. Palpatine chuckled. You already treat him as one, Master Kenobi. The accusation hit uncomfortably close to truth. Anakin felt it. Years of expectations, pressure, restrictions. Kronika observed the emotional fracture forming between them. Another data point. Suddenly, Torpek broke free. The Mandalorian warlord roared as the temporal stasis around him shattered through sheer will and advanced neural implants embedded in his armor systems. Time distortion cracked around his body. "Enough!" he bellowed. Everyone turned. Even Kronika showed surprise. Torvek charged again, energy axe blazing, but this time he wasn't aiming for Kronika, he aimed for Palpatine. Warrior instinct recognized the greater predator. Palpatine's eyes flashed yellow for a split second. Lightning exploded from his fingertips. The Mandalorian flew backward, armor smoking, crashing into the chamber wall. Anakin froze. Obi-Wan's heart skipped. Dooku smiled faintly. The secret was out.
"Seth," Obi-Wan whispered. Palpatine straightened calmly, dark energy fading from his hands. "Yes," he said. Anakin staggered back slightly. You're... The galaxy requires stronger leadership than the Senate can provide," Palpatine said smoothly. "I had hoped you would understand, Anakin." Betrayal hit like a physical blow. Kronika watched the emotional collapse with intense curiosity. This moment, this fracture, it existed in countless timelines. The turning point. The Force roared. Anakin's anger exploded outward, shaking the chamber. Energy surged around him violently. Kronika felt probability lines shifting again, rapidly. The convergence was accelerating. Decision time had arrived. She raised her hands. Golden light filled the chamber. "I have reached a conclusion," she announced. Everyone tensed, even Palpatine. "I will not reset the timeline," Kronika said. Obi-Wan felt relief surge, but she continued. "I will not eliminate the convergence." Anakin exhaled slightly. Then, "I will observe." Confusion spread across their faces. Palpatine frowned. "Observe?" "Yes," Kronika said. "This galaxy's temporal complexity exceeds initial projections. Direct intervention risks instability." She lowered her hands slightly. "I will allow events to unfold while guiding critical variables." Her eyes settled on Anakin. "You remain the fulcrum." A chilling promise. Not salvation, not destruction, experimentation. The temporal field collapsed. Time resumed. Explosions roared back into existence. Blaster fire resumed. The battle outside continued, but nothing was the same anymore. Because now, Kronika had chosen patience.
Time slammed back into motion like a tidal wave. Sound returned first, explosions, blaster fire, alarms echoing through the temple corridors. Then movement followed, warriors resuming mid-stride, sparks continuing their interrupted arcs through the air, dust collapsing to the floor. But the emotional aftermath of what had just occurred inside the temporal pocket did not vanish. Anakin still stared at Palpatine. Obi-Wan still processed the revelation. Dooku still calculated outcomes. And Kronika still watched them all. The battlefield had resumed. The war within had only begun. Torvek, still smoking from Sith lightning, pushed himself upright with a guttural growl. His Beskar armor had absorbed the worst of the energy, but cracks glowed faintly where circuits had overloaded. He pointed his axe toward Palpatine. "You," he rasped, "you're the real prize." Mandalorians valued strength above all, and Torvek had just witnessed terrifying power. Palpatine smiled pleasantly. "I assure you, I am not available for capture." Torvek roared and charged again. This time, multiple Jedi intercepted him simultaneously, forcing the Mandalorian warlord into defensive combat. The chamber exploded into chaos. Anakin barely noticed. His focus remained locked on Palpatine. "You lied to me," he said, voice low and shaking. Palpatine's expression softened. "I protected you." "That's not protection," Anakin snapped. "You're a Sith." Obi-Wan stepped forward cautiously. Anakin, we need to focus. No, Anakin shouted. You both knew things. Everyone's always hiding something. The emotional fracture Kronika had predicted was unfolding perfectly. Fear, betrayal, anger, all variables aligning toward a familiar trajectory. But she did not intervene. Not yet. Meanwhile, Dooku assessed the battlefield rapidly. The mission had failed. Kronika was not leaving with him today, but new information had emerged. Palpatine's identity risked exposure. Anakin's emotional instability had accelerated. Kronika had chosen observation instead of reset. All valuable developments. He disengaged from combat, force pushing several Jedi backward before retreating toward the exit corridor. "We will meet again," he told Kronika calmly. She inclined her head slightly. Yes. Then Dooku vanished into the smoke as Separatist forces withdrew. Outside the temple, Republic reinforcements finally stabilized the situation. Gunships blasted Mandalorian dropships from the sky. Clone troopers secured perimeter zones. Criminal mercenaries either fled or were captured. Within minutes, the coordinated multi-factional assault collapsed, but the real damage had already occurred. Because secrets had been revealed, trust had fractured, and Kronika remained free.
Hours later, inside the Jedi Council chamber, tension hung thicker than ever before. Anakin stood before the Masters, arms crossed tightly. Palpatine's identity had not been publicly exposed yet. Obi-Wan had reported suspicions, but evidence remained incomplete. The Council chose caution, which only deepened Anakin's frustration. "You knew something was wrong," he said to them. "You always do, but you never tell me anything." Mace Windu's expression remained stern. "We are investigating." "That's not an answer," Anakin snapped. Yoda studied him carefully. "Fear clouds you, Skywalker." Anakin laughed bitterly. "Fear? A time goddess shows up, tells me I destroy the galaxy, the Chancellor shoots lightning from his hands, and I'm supposed to feel calm?" No one responded, because he wasn't wrong. Kronika stood silently near the chamber window, observing Coruscant's endless skyline. She had been permitted to remain within the temple, for now under Jedi supervision. But supervision meant little. No one here could truly contain her. She extended her perception through the Force again. Probability lines continued branching around Anakin faster than any other node in the galaxy. The convergence was accelerating, which meant the decisive point approached sooner than expected. She needed more data. Across the galaxy, Mandalorian survivors regrouped aboard a hidden cruiser. Torvek removed his damaged helmet slowly, revealing scarred features twisted with determination. "We failed," one warrior said. Torvek slammed his fist into a console. "No," he growled, "we learned." He replayed combat footage showing Kronika freezing time, Sith lightning striking, Jedi fighting. Power beyond Mandalorian strength, but power could still be seized. "We prepare again," Torvek ordered. "Next time, we bring everything." Mandalorians did not abandon objectives. They escalated them. On the opposite side of the galaxy, in Separatist space, Dooku knelt before Darth Sidious via hologram transmission. "My master," he said calmly, "events on Coruscant have accelerated beyond projection." Sidious's hooded figure flickered blue. "Yes," the Sith Lord replied, "but opportunity grows with chaos." Dooku hesitated slightly. "The Jedis suspect you." Sidious chuckled. "They always suspect. Suspicion is not proof." Dooku nodded. "And Kronika?" Sidious's smile widened beneath the hood. "She will come to me again." Absolute confidence. Back at the temple, night deepened over Coruscant. Anakin stood alone on a balcony overlooking the city. His mind raced. Destiny, future visions, Palpatine's betrayal, Kronika's predictions. Everything felt unstable. Then he sensed her presence behind him. Kronika stepped into the moonlight. "You are troubled," she said. "That's an understatement," Anakin replied. Silence lingered for a moment. Then he asked quietly, "Do I really become that monster?" Kronika did not lie. "In many timelines, yes." Anakin's shoulders tensed. "But not all," she added. Hope flickered. "What changes it?" he asked. Kronika looked out over the city lights. "Choice," she said, "and influence." He turned toward her. "Whose influence?" Kronika met his eyes. "That remains undetermined, because she herself might become the deciding factor." Far above Coruscant, the anomaly in space pulsed again. Larger, more unstable. Temporal fractures spread outward into hyperspace lanes. The longer Kronika remained in this universe, the more reality itself adapted around her presence. A critical threshold approached. Soon, something would break.
The Force had always been described as an energy field, something that connected life, bound the galaxy together, whispered through intuition and destiny. But in this moment, it screamed. Luke Skywalker felt it before anyone else. Deep within the ancient Jedi sanctuary on Ossus, he sat cross-legged among towering stone pillars, carved by a civilization long extinct. The air smelled faintly of dust, incense, and ozone from nearby training sabers. Outside, twin moons hung low in the sky, bathing the temple ruins in silver light. Then time skipped. Not slowed, skipped. For half a heartbeat, existence lurched forward and corrected itself. Luke's eyes snapped open. A pressure like gravitational collapse pressed against his mind, vast, ancient, utterly foreign. Not Sith, not dark side corruption, something beyond the Force itself. He stood slowly, robes shifting across the stone floor, listening. Across the galaxy, hyperspace routes flickered with temporal interference. Starships reported navigational anomalies. Droids rebooted spontaneously. Entire planetary communications networks experienced microsecond gaps in continuity that no one could explain. To ordinary beings, it was a glitch. To Force sensitives, it was terror. Luke stepped outside into the cool night air. The stars above Ossus were wrong. Constellations trembled as if reality itself struggled to maintain alignment. And then he heard her voice. "You are the convergence point." The words echoed directly inside his consciousness. Calm, curious, ancient beyond comprehension. Luke closed his eyes and reached outward through the Force. Immediately, resistance met him. Time itself resisted his perception, like currents flowing against him from every direction simultaneously. He understood instantly. Whoever this was, they were manipulating causality, and they were powerful enough to disturb the Force without belonging to it. Luke whispered softly, "I've been waiting for you." Far beyond Ossus, suspended within a crystalline sphere of fractured chronology, Kronika observed him. The hourglass of time floated behind her, not physically present, but projected through dimensional anchoring into this universe. Streams of golden temporal sand flowed upward and downward simultaneously, each grain representing branching possibilities. She had studied countless timelines since arriving in this galaxy. Empires rising, empires falling, wars repeating, balance emerging, chaos returning, again and again. At the center of nearly every stable outcome, one lineage persisted: Skywalker. The anomaly intrigued her.
She had already attempted multiple calibrations, altering minor historical variables, shifting probability vectors, freezing regional time pockets, but each adjustment encountered resistance. The Force corrected deviations, a self-regulating system, inefficient, unpredictable, yet strangely elegant, and at the center of its equilibrium, Luke Skywalker. Kronika extended her perception deeper. Immediately she felt it. Not merely power, harmony, light and darkness coexisting without collapse, a living fulcrum. For the first time since entering this universe, Kronika experienced uncertainty.
Luke sensed her arrival seconds before she manifested. The air grew heavy. Wind stopped moving. Insects fell silent. Even the Force seemed to hold its breath. Golden light fractured space 10 meters ahead of him. Reality peeled open like a curtain. Kronika stepped through. She appeared as a towering figure of celestial energy, pale skin glowing faintly, eyes radiating cosmic authority, armor formed from temporal constructs rather than matter. Luke studied her calmly. She studied him with equal intensity. Neither moved. "You're not from here," Luke said. "Correct." Her voice resonated both audibly and telepathically. "I am Kronika, keeper of time, architect of destiny." Luke nodded once. "I'm Luke Skywalker." "I know." A pause followed. Wind resumed gently across the ruins. "You've been altering events," Luke continued. "Subtle changes, testing reactions." "Yes." "Why?" Kronika tilted her head slightly. "This galaxy exists in perpetual imbalance. Conflict cycles endlessly. Billions suffer across repeating eras. My purpose is correction." Luke considered that. "You want to fix history. I want to perfect it." Without warning, Kronika raised her hand. Time fractured. The temple vanished. Luke stood suddenly inside the burning Jedi temple on Coruscant decades earlier, screams echoing through corridors, clone troopers marching, flames consuming ancient archives. Anakin Skywalker walked past him toward the council chamber. Another shift. Luke stood on Bespin, watching Darth Vader reveal the truth. Another shift. He stood before the Emperor on the second Death Star. Another. He saw himself older, darker, ruling as a tyrant across a conquered galaxy. Possible futures, possible pasts, all layered simultaneously. Kronika's voice echoed around him. "Observe the inefficiency of destiny." Luke closed his eyes. The Force flowed through him. Calm returned. When he opened his eyes again, the visions shattered. They stood once more on Ossus. Kronika's expression changed slightly. Interest deepened. "You resisted temporal displacement. The Force connects all moments. Past and future exist together. Yet I control them. Not completely." Kronika stepped closer. "You are the stabilizing variable. Remove you, and recalibration becomes simple." Luke didn't ignite his lightsaber. "You could try," he said gently, "but you'd break something you don't understand." Silence stretched. Stars flickered overhead. For the first time in her existence, Kronika hesitated. She extended her perception into Luke's timeline. Instantly, she encountered something astonishing. Anakin Skywalker's redemption. A Sith Lord choosing compassion. A destiny rewritten, not through manipulation, but choice. The Force surged violently around that moment, brighter than any event she had analyzed. "This system," she murmured, "it generates equilibrium organically." Luke nodded. "Balance isn't control, it's acceptance."
Kronika's eyes hardened. Acceptance allows suffering. Control creates it.
Without warning, time stopped completely. Stars froze, wind froze, sound vanished, dust hung motionless mid-air. Only Kronika moved. She circled Luke slowly. Except Luke turned his head and looked directly at her. Time was frozen, but he wasn't. Kronika felt something impossible. Resistance. "How?" she whispered. "The Force isn't bound by time," Luke said quietly. "It flows through everything." For the first time in millennia, Kronika felt threatened. Her power surged instantly. Golden energy erupted outward, temporal shockwaves expanding across planetary orbit. Space cracked like glass. Luke ignited his lightsaber. Blue light cut through frozen reality. The ground beneath them shattered into floating fragments, suspended in stopped time. Kronika raised both arms. Above them, a colossal hourglass manifestation formed, larger than a star destroyer, temporal sand cascading in cosmic torrents. "If this galaxy cannot achieve perfection naturally," she declared, "I will impose it." Luke felt the truth immediately. She intended to reset history itself, erase wars, erase suffering, erase countless lives, erase him. A morally perfect universe created through annihilation. Luke understood the dilemma. If she succeeded, billions might never suffer, but free will would vanish, choice would vanish, the Force itself might change forever. He lowered his blade slightly. "There's another way," he said. Kronika's energy intensified. "Show me." Luke closed his eyes. He reached deeper into the Force than ever before, past light, past dark, into the living balance between them. Suddenly, a second presence appeared beside him, warm, familiar, proud. Luke opened his eyes. A luminous figure stood next to him. Anakin Skywalker, not as Vader, as himself. Father and son faced the goddess of time together. Kronika's eyes widened. "A temporal echo." "No," Luke said softly, "the Force." Kronika unleashed her power. A wave capable of rewriting the galaxy surged forward. Luke and Anakin stepped into it together. Reality exploded into light. The universe did not shatter. It unraveled. Kronika's temporal wave collided with Luke Skywalker and the luminous presence of Anakin, and for a fraction of existence, less than a nanosecond, yet longer than eternity, time ceased to behave as a sequence. Past, present, and future folded inward like collapsing stars. Galaxies flickered between states. Wars both happened and did not happen. Entire civilizations blinked through alternate histories like reflections on broken glass. Luke felt everything. Every life, every choice, every moment of suffering Kronika wanted to erase, and every moment of hope that suffering had created. He understood her now, completely. She was not cruel, she was not tyrannical. She was lonely. A being who had watched infinite timelines repeat tragedy until control became compassion in her mind, and compassion became domination. The Force surged through Luke with unprecedented intensity, not light, not dark, but equilibrium. Beside him, Anakin's presence stabilized the current. Father and son, past and future, redemption and legacy. Together, they formed something Kronika had never encountered before. Self-chosen balance, not imposed, not engineered. Chosen.
Kronika pushed harder. Golden energy roared outward, hourglass sands accelerating into a cosmic storm capable of overwriting galactic history. "I can end suffering," she declared, voice echoing across dimensions. Luke stepped forward into the wave. Pain tore through him, not physical pain, but existential pressure, as if his identity were being rewritten moment by moment. He did not resist. Instead, he opened himself. Through the Force, he showed her everything. She saw a slave boy on Tatooine helping strangers without reward. She saw that boy become a hero, then a monster, then a savior again. She saw Leia Organa choosing rebellion despite fear. She saw ordinary beings risking their lives for others with no certainty of success. She saw grief, loss, sacrifice, but also love born from those experiences, hope forged through hardship, meaning created through struggle. Kronika faltered, the temporal storm destabilized. "These outcomes," she whispered, "they arise from chaos." Luke's voice echoed calmly within her perception. "They arise from freedom." For the first time since her creation, Kronika questioned her purpose. Across infinite timelines, she had believed control was mercy. But here, she saw something else. A universe where suffering was not proof of failure. It was part of growth. Not efficient, not predictable, but alive. The Force itself responded to that truth, currents stabilizing, temporal fractures beginning to seal around them. Kronika lowered her hands slightly. "If I allow events to continue, billions will suffer." Luke nodded. "Yes. And billions will thrive." "Yes." Her voice softened. "I was created to eliminate imbalance." Anakin stepped forward now, luminous and calm. "And I was created to bring it," he said gently. "Balance isn't perfection, it's choice." Kronika stared at this man, who had been both destroyer and redeemer, a paradox she could not resolve through logic alone. The hourglass above them trembled. If she released full power now, everything could still reset. A flawless timeline. No Sith, no Empire, no wars, no suffering, no Luke, no Anakin, no freedom. Kronika understood the decision. For the first time, she had one herself.
The storm collapsed. Golden energy receded inward, hourglass sands slowing until they floated motionless in space. Reality snapped back into linear time. Stars resumed movement. Wind returned. Sound returned. Luke fell to one knee, exhausted but alive. Anakin's spirit placed a hand on his shoulder briefly, pride radiating through the Force. Kronika hovered before them, silent. "You have shown me something unprecedented," she said. Luke looked up. "What?" "A system that achieves balance without control." A pause. "I will not reset this galaxy." Relief spread through the Force like sunrise, but Kronika was not finished. "However," she continued, "this universe remains unstable. Conflict cycles endlessly. I cannot ignore that." Luke stood slowly. "So what will you do?" Kronika turned toward the stars. "I will observe." Across the galaxy, temporal anomalies began stabilizing. On Mandalorian worlds, warriors felt the strange pressure disappear from the air. Within criminal syndicates, navigational disruptions vanished. Imperial remnants regained consistent hyperspace routes. On distant Force-sensitive worlds, children stopped experiencing prophetic nightmares. Reality healed. But something had changed. The Force itself felt wider, as if a new dimension had been acknowledged. Luke sensed it immediately. Kronika was still connected to this universe, not controlling it,
but present, a cosmic observer beyond the Force's natural structure, a new variable in existence. Kronika looked at Luke one final time. "You are the convergence point," she said again. "Your choices will shape this galaxy more than any temporal correction." Luke smiled faintly. No pressure. For the first time, Kronika almost smiled back. Golden light enveloped her form. The hourglass shrank into a condensed singularity of temporal energy, a dormant artifact bound to her essence. Then she vanished beyond measurable space-time. Not gone, simply elsewhere, watching, learning, waiting. Anakin's spirit turned toward Luke. "You did well," he said. Luke exhaled. "I almost lost." Anakin shook his head. "No, you chose." A warm pride flowed through the Force between them. Then Anakin faded gently into luminous particles, returning to the cosmic current. Luke stood alone beneath the stars of Ossus, but the galaxy no longer felt alone. Somewhere beyond time itself, a goddess was watching with curiosity instead of control, and that might change everything.
The arrival of Kronika into the Star Wars galaxy did not end in conquest, domination, or destruction, but transformation. The central conflict resolved not through superior power, but through philosophical revelation. Kronika, a being designed to impose perfect timelines, encountered a universe where balance emerged organically through choice, sacrifice, and the unpredictable nature of free will. Luke Skywalker's role is a living nexus of equilibrium, supported by the legacy of Anakin's redemption, demonstrated that harmony could exist without absolute control. By choosing not to reset galactic history, Kronika altered her own trajectory. Rather than ruler of destiny, she became an observer beyond time, a cosmic entity aware of the Force, yet separate from it. Her continued existence introduces a profound future implication. The Star Wars galaxy now contains a temporal intelligence capable of intervening if imbalance ever reaches catastrophic levels again. For Luke in the emerging Jedi Order, this encounter deepened understanding of the Force itself. Balance was no longer just prophecy, it was proof that light and dark, suffering and hope could coexist without annihilating one another. The experience strengthened Luke's resolve to rebuild the Jedi not as rigid guardians, but as guides who respected freedom. Thematically, the story ends on a bittersweet yet triumphant tone. Suffering was not erased, wars would still occur, loss would still exist, but meaning remained intact because beings retained the right to choose their paths. And somewhere beyond time's horizon, Kronika watched the galaxy with newfound respect, no longer seeking perfection, but understanding.